I am completing the Console5'S Atari 2600 cab kit today on Arctic Lab Services. This is part 2 of my Console5 Atari 2600 Light Sixer cab kit install. If you need to watch part 1 first, you can click on the card in the corner or the link in the description. I will link the Console5's cab kit in the description below, along with affiliate links to single components on eBay. In part 1, we focused on the switchboard. We replaced all these components. In part 2, we are focusing on the mainboard. We are replacing another 4.7 microfarad 35 volt capacitor, two 820 picofarad 50 volt styrene capacitors, installing an 820 ohm resistor, and two 0.1 microfarad capacitors with zenor diodes for static protection. Also included in this kit is a power jack. There is nothing wrong with mine, but I will replace it for the sake of the tutorial. First, let's replace the 4.7 microfarad 35 volt capacitor. This one is located at C201. This is a video filter. If it is failing, you will get wavy, fuzzy, distorted, or no video. It is polarized. The positive position is marked on the main board with a plus symbol. The negative on the capacitor points to the left. These are the two solder points here, the right one being negative. To desolder it, just add some fresh flux paste and solder. Then remove the solder with a solder sucker or some solder wick. Then remove the capacitor. Some persuasion might be needed while adding some heat. The kit comes with a radial type capacitor. The negative is indicated by the stripe on one side or by the shorter leg. Originally this is an axial type capacitor, but the new one will still work. Simply bend the legs out, then down to match the vias. I used the old capacitor to get an idea of how far apart they need to be. Then put it into place, making sure the negative is to the outside. Then bend the legs in to keep it in place. Then as we solder them into place, straighten them out. Then trim the legs to finish it off. Next we are replacing the two 820 picofarad 50 volt styrene capacitors. These are located at C206 and C207. These are audio filters. If these fail, you'll get low, staticky, distorted, or no audio at all. These are the four solder points we need to desolder. Desolder them in the same fashion. These were really stubborn. I had to straighten out the legs with tweezers while heating up the solder. Then pull them out while applying heat. You have to be careful on how long you keep the heat on the PCB. It could damage the via or trace. Console5 put a pink mark on the capacitors so you don't mix them up with the 0.1 microfarad capacitors. These are not polarized, so they can go in either way. Solder them on like the other ones. The 820 ohm resistor is added to improve the color. It is simply soldered to pins 6 and 9 on the bottom of the TIA chip. On the solder side of the TIA chip, pin 1 is marked. Count 6 pins, then 9. Line up and bend the legs to reach each pin. Then tin each leg and trim to size. Add fresh solder to the pins to make it easier. Then solder it into place. The resistor is not polarized, so it doesn't matter which way it goes. Next we are replacing C236 and C237 with a 0.1 microfarad capacitor and a zenor diode for static protection. I am only showing you one since they are identical. Start by removing the old capacitors. This one is also being stubborn. I have to use tweezers to help pull it out of the via. To clear the vias, add a little bit more solder and then use the solder sucker to clear the via. To prepare the capacitor and diode, leave the diode straight and tin each side. Then bend the capacitor's leg as close as they will go and solder it onto the zenor diode. Then trim the legs on the diode. It should look like this. Take note of the black stripe on the diode. Make sure the black stripe is toward the controller port when placing it into the mainboard. Then solder it into place. Finish it off by trimming the legs. The last thing we are doing is replacing the DC power jack. If this is failing, you will get random resets, unstable power, or no power at all. The solder pads are really big, so they will take a little extra heat. Some of the legs are bent, making removal difficult. Remove as much solder as you can, then try and bend the leg with your soldering iron while heating up the solder. If need be, straighten the legs with pliers, or flush cutters in my case. After making sure the vias are clear, simply solder the new jack in place. And that's it. That is how we install the Console5'S Atari 2600 cap kit into an Atari 2600 Light 6er. Thanks for watching.